Invisible in plain sight. The grand ballroom of the Atlantis Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the murmur of Dubai's corporate elite. Zara adjusted the modest black dress she'd chosen carefully, elegant enough to belong, simple enough to remain invisible. Beside her, Karim straightened his tie nervously, his marketing coordinator badge gleaming under the lights like a beacon announcing his middle management status. "Remember, Habibti, just smile and nod," Karim whispered, squeezing her hand. "These networking events can be intense." Zara smiled softly. If only he knew how familiar she was with rooms like this, how she'd once commanded them with a different name, a different life. But that woman had died 3 years ago, buried under the weight of betrayal and broken trust. Tonight, she was simply Karim's wife, content to watch from the sidelines. "Mrs. Al-Rashid, how lovely to meet you." The voice belonged to Hamza Qureshi, the company's senior vice president, his smile not quite reaching his eyes as he assessed her simple appearance. "And what do you do, dear?" "I support my husband," Zara replied quietly, ignoring the flash of dismissal that crossed his face. "How traditional." Hamza's laugh was polite but sharp. "Well, the wives' corner is over by the dessert table. I'm sure you'll find the conversation more suitable there." As Hamza steered Karim toward a cluster of executives, Zara heard him say, "Lucky man, having such a devoted little housewife. Though perhaps next time you could encourage her to dress more ambitiously." The sting of his words followed her as she moved through the crowd, past clusters of power-suited men and diamond-draped women who looked through her as if she were made of glass. At the bar, she ordered sparkling water and listened to the conversations swirling around her. "Did you see the quarterly projections for the Emirates project? The merger with Ulnor Holdings is supposed to be announced tonight. Someone's buying out half the company, but no one knows who." Zara's fingers tightened around her glass. She knew exactly who was buying Ulnor Holdings, just as she knew the real numbers behind those quarterly projections, numbers that would make these confident executives reconsider their strategies entirely. A woman in an emerald gown approached the bar, glancing at Zara with barely concealed amusement. "You must be one of the staff wives," she said, her tone syrupy with false kindness. "How sweet that they let you attend. Though perhaps next time, someone could help you with your presentation? This isn't really a casual event, darling." Zara met the woman's gaze steadily. "I appreciate your concern." "Of course. We all started somewhere." The woman's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "Though I suppose not everyone needs to understand the complexities of high-stakes business. Some of us are simply meant to be decorative." As the woman glided away, Zara watched her join a circle of executives, no doubt sharing the amusing story of the underdressed nobody at the bar. The familiar burn of humiliation rose in her chest, but she pushed it down. She'd learned to swallow pride like medicine, bitter but necessary for survival. Across the room, Karim caught her eye and smiled, his face radiating pure love and respect. He saw her worth even when she couldn't see it herself, even when the rest of the world dismissed her as insignificant. Tonight, that would change everything. Shadows of the past 3 years earlier, Zara Nazir had been the youngest executive director in the history of Crescent Enterprises, commanding boardrooms and building an empire before her 30th birthday. She'd believed in meritocracy, in the power of intelligence and hard work to overcome any obstacle. That naivety had cost her everything. The betrayal came from those she'd trusted most, her business partner and former lover, Tariq Mansouri, who'd systematically undermined her while stealing her strategies. When the company collapsed amid fraud allegations, Tariq had painted her as the architect of the scheme while positioning himself as the whistleblower. The media had been merciless, her reputation destroyed overnight. "You were too trusting," her lawyer had said during the settlement negotiations. "In this business, paranoia isn't a character flaw, it's a survival skill." Zara had walked away with nothing but her intelligence and a burning determination to prove them all wrong. She'd changed her name legally, deleted her social media presence, and disappeared into the anonymity of ordinary life. For 6 months, she'd worked as a financial consultant for small businesses, slowly rebuilding her confidence and her fortune. That's where she'd met Karim. Not in a boardroom or at a networking event, but at a small cafe where he was struggling over a business plan for his startup idea. She'd been drawn to his sincerity, his complete lack of pretense. When he'd asked for her advice on revenue projections, she'd helped him without revealing her background. "You're brilliant," he'd said simply after she'd restructured his entire financial model. "How did you learn to think like this?" "Life teaches hard lessons," she'd replied, and he'd nodded as if he understood the weight behind those words. Their courtship had been built on honesty about everything except her past. She'd told him about her consulting work, her business degree, her dreams of someday starting her own company again. She'd simply omitted the part about already having built and lost an empire. While rebuilding her personal life with Karim, Zara had quietly constructed something far more ambitious than Crescent Enterprises had ever been. Using shell companies and international partnerships, she created a web of investments that touched dozens of industries. The woman who'd once been destroyed by betrayal had learned to trust no one completely, except the man who loved her without knowing her powered Olnor Holdings had been her target for over a year. The company was profitable but poorly managed, its leadership more concerned with prestige than performance. She'd watched Karim's frustration with their short-sighted strategies, his brilliant ideas dismissed because of his junior position. Tonight would change that. "You seem far away, Habibti," Karim had said just that morning as they'd prepared for the gala. "Are you nervous about tonight?" "A little," she'd admitted, adjusting his tie with trembling fingers. "Sometimes the past feels very close." He'd cupped her face in his hands, his eyes full of the gentle understanding that had made her fall in love with him. "Whatever happened before, it made you who you are. And who you are is perfect." If only he knew that who she was had purchased majority control of his company through a carefully orchestrated acquisition that had taken 18 months to complete. Tonight, she would step out of the shadows not for revenge, but for the chance to build something better, with the man who'd shown her that love could exist without agenda. The irony wasn't lost on her. 3 years ago, she'd lost everything to people who'd underestimated her. Tonight, she would reclaim her place among those who'd made the same mistake. The weight of whispers the evening deepened, and with it, the casual cruelty of the corporate elite. Zara found herself relegated to conversations about skincare routines and vacation destinations while the men discussed billion-dirham deals mere meters away. She listened with practiced patience as Fatima Al-Mansouri, wife of the company's CFO, explained why women like them shouldn't concern themselves with such complicated matters. "Business is simply too stressful for delicate constitutions," Fatima declared, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she gestured dismissively. "Much better to focus on supporting our husbands and creating beautiful homes." Zara nodded politely, though her mind automatically calculated the flaws in the merger strategy being discussed behind them. The due diligence was incomplete, the market timing questionable, and the projected synergies wildly optimistic. She'd seen companies destroyed by less ambitious mistakes. "You're very quiet, dear," observed Layla bin Rashid, the marketing director's wife. "Surely you have opinions about, well, something." "I find listening teaches me more than speaking," Zara replied softly. The women exchanged glances, the kind that said everything about their assessment of her intelligence. Meanwhile, Karim stood uncomfortably among his colleagues as they made increasingly pointed comments about appropriate partners for ambitious men. Regional Director Omar Khalil clapped Karim's shoulder with false camaraderie. "We all appreciate loyalty, my friend, but in this business, perception matters. Your wife seems sweet, but perhaps a bit out of her depth. The board notices these things during promotion reviews." Karim's jaw tightened. "My wife is exactly where she belongs, with me." Of course, Omar laughed. "Just friendly advice. Some of us have learned to balance personal happiness with professional advancement." Zara watched her husband's face redden with suppressed anger, her heart aching for him. Karim had no idea that the woman they dismissed could buy and sell most of their companies before breakfast. He defended her honor based purely on love, not knowing she needed no defense. As the group moved toward the presentation area, Zara caught fragments of hushed conversations. "Poor Karim, married to such a simple girl. Does she even have a university degree? Probably thinks a P&L statement is a grocery list." Each whisper was a small blade, but Zara had developed thick skin during her years of exile. She'd rebuilt herself in silence, creating something far greater than what she'd lost. Tonight's humiliation was simply the price of admission to a game she'd already won. The lights dimmed as CEO Rashid Al Maktoum took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, Tonight marks a historic moment for our company." Zara's pulse quickened. She knew what came next, had orchestrated it through layers of corporate shells and offshore entities. For 3 years, she'd watched this company from the shadows, studying its weaknesses, understanding its potential. "We are pleased to announce a strategic partnership that will reshape our future," Rashid continued. "Our new majority stakeholder brings unprecedented vision and capital." In the crowd, Hamza leaned toward his circle of executives. Probably another old money family from London. These investors never show their faces. Zara almost smiled. If only they knew how close to the truth they were, and how wrong. Beside her, Karim reached for her hand, his palm warm and slightly damp with nervous excitement. "This could change everything for us, Habibti." She squeezed his fingers gently. "Yes, my love. Everything." "The revelation, ladies and gentlemen," CEO Rashid Al Maktoum announced from the stage, his voice cutting through the ballroom's murmur. "It is my honor to introduce the visionary behind our company's new direction. Please welcome the founder and CEO of Meridian Capital Holdings, Ms. Zara Nazir Al-Rashid." The silence that followed was deafening. Zara felt 300 pairs of eyes turn toward her as she stood slowly, her modest black dress suddenly seeming like armor rather than camouflage. Beside her, Karim's hand went slack in hers, his face a canvas of shock and dawning realization. "That's impossible," Hamza whispered loudly enough for half the room to hear. She's nobody." Zara walked toward the stage with measured steps, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown to Judgment Day. Behind her, she heard the rustle of expensive fabric as people turned to each other in desperate confusion. "Did he say Nazir?" someone hissed. "As in the Nazir who built Crescent Enterprises?" "But that woman disappeared years ago after the scandal. She can't be the same person." Zara accepted the microphone from Rashid, who looked as stunned as everyone else despite having negotiated the acquisition through layers of corporate representatives. She'd insisted on anonymity until this moment, conducting all business through intermediaries and legal teams. "Thank you, Rashid," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "I apologize for the unconventional introduction, but I believe in leading by example rather than reputation." The crowd remained frozen, their shock palpable. She found Karim's face in the audience, her husband's expression cycling between confusion, pride, and something that might have been betrayal. "For the past 18 months, I've been observing this company," Zara continued, her tone professional but warm. "I've seen tremendous potential constrained by rigid thinking and missed opportunities. I've watched brilliant ideas dismissed because they came from the wrong level of management." Her gaze swept across the executives who dismissed her hours earlier. Fatima Al-Mansuri had gone pale, her diamond bracelet forgotten as her hand pressed against her throat. Omar Khalil stared as if seeing a ghost, which, in many ways, he was. "Some of you may remember my previous work with Crescent Enterprises," Zara said, addressing the elephant in the room directly. "That experience taught me valuable lessons about trust, leadership, and the difference between building something and simply managing it." Hamza found his voice first, though it came out as a croak. Ms. Nazir, we had no idea." "Of course you didn't," Zara replied gently. "You saw what you expected to see, a quiet woman who didn't belong in your world. But that assumption says more about your limitations than mine." The room erupted in nervous whispers as people began connecting dots they'd missed entirely. The woman they dismissed as a simple housewife had just revealed herself as one of the most powerful figures in the regional business landscape. "I want to be clear about my intentions," Zara continued, raising her hand for silence. "I'm not here for revenge or to settle old scores. I'm here because this company has the potential to be extraordinary, but it requires leadership that values innovation over hierarchy, substance over perception." She paused, letting that sink in before delivering her final point. "Effective immediately, I'm implementing a new management structure based on merit rather than politics. Those who contribute will be rewarded. Those who prefer the status quo may find opportunities elsewhere." The implications hit the crowd like a physical force. Careers that had seemed secure moments before now hung in the balance. The woman they'd mocked held their professional futures in her hands. Zara stepped down from the stage. The crowd parted before her like water. She walked directly to Karim, whose face showed a mixture of awe and hurt that made her heart clench. "We need to talk," he said quietly, his voice barely audible above the chaos erupting around them. "Yes," she agreed, reaching for his hand. "We do." But first, she had a toast to make. Grace in victory. The ballroom had transformed into a storm of whispered apologies and desperate networking attempts. Executives who'd ignored Zara minutes earlier now hovered nearby, waiting for an opportunity to salvage their careers. But her attention remained focused on Karim, whose silence spoke volumes. 24 years I've known you," he said quietly as they stood in a small alcove away from the crowd. "We've been married for 2 years. And you never thought to mention that you're this." Zara's heart ached at the pain in his voice. "I wanted to tell you so many times. But after what happened with Crescent, I needed to know that someone could love me for who I am, not what I own." "Who you are?" Karim's laugh was hollow. "I'm not even sure I know who that is anymore." Before she could respond, Hamza appeared with a group of senior executives, their faces masks of professional desperation. "Ms. Nazir, if we could just have a moment to discuss the transition." "Tomorrow," Zara said firmly. "Tonight is about celebration, not business." "Of course, absolutely," Hamza stammered. "We just wanted to apologize for any misunderstanding earlier. If we'd known, you would have treated me differently," Zara finished. "I understand. But that's exactly why I chose not to reveal myself." Omar Khalil stepped forward, his earlier arrogance replaced by something approaching panic. About my comments to your husband. I was completely out of line. If there's anything I can do to make amends." "You can treat every person in this room with the same respect you're showing me now," Zara replied, "regardless of their title or apparent status." As the executives retreated, Fatima al-Mansuri approached hesitantly. "Zara, may I call you Zara? I feel simply awful about earlier. If I'd known you were such an accomplished businesswoman, you would have included me in different conversations," Zara said gently. "But the conversations I was excluded from revealed far more about this company's culture than any presentation could have." Fatima's face crumpled slightly. "Will you be making changes to the executive staff?" "I'll be making changes based on competence and character," Zara replied. "Your husband's financial acumen is impressive, but leadership requires more than technical skill." As word spread through the room, a receiving line of sorts formed, people desperate to curry favor with their new leader. Zara endured it with professional grace, but her heart remained with Karim, who watched from a distance with unreadable eyes. Finally, she couldn't stand the separation any longer. Walking to the center of the room, she raised her hand for attention. The ballroom fell silent immediately. "If I may," she said, her voice carrying without amplification, "I'd like to make a toast." A server appeared instantly with a glass of champagne. Zara accepted it but then set it aside, reaching instead for the sparkling water she'd been drinking all evening. 3 years ago, I lost everything I thought mattered. My company, my reputation, my faith in people, she began. I believed that power and position were the measures of success, that respect had to be earned through achievement. She found Karim's eyes in the crowd. But this man taught me something far more valuable. He showed me that true worth isn't about what you own or control, it's about how you treat people when you have nothing to gain from them. Karim's expression softened slightly, though hurt still lingered there. My husband fell in love with a woman who had no corporate titles, no impressive portfolio, no social connections. He loved her intelligence, her kindness, her dreams for the future. He defended her honor tonight against people who couldn't see past appearances. The room had gone completely still, everyone recognizing the weight of her words. That is the kind of man I want leading projects in this company, Zara continued. That is the kind of character I want to build our future upon. She raised her glass toward Karim. So here's to you, my love, for seeing value where others see nothing, for believing in people rather than positions, for showing me that the most powerful thing in any room isn't money or status. Her voice grew stronger, more certain. It's integrity. The applause that followed was uncertain, as if people weren't sure whether they were witnessing a business presentation or something far more personal. Zara didn't care. She walked directly to Karim, who met her halfway. "I should have told you," she said simply. "Not because you needed to know for any practical reason, but because marriages shouldn't have secrets." Karim studied her face for a long moment. "Why now? Why reveal yourself tonight?" "Because I'm tired of hiding from my own success," she admitted. "And because I want to build something with you, not just as your wife, but as your partner in every sense." Slowly, Karim's hand found hers. "No more secrets." "No more secrets," she promised. As they stood together in the center of the transformed ballroom, surrounded by people reassessing everything they thought they knew about power and worth, Zara realized she'd found something far more valuable than revenge. She'd found her way home.